terribly bad and not help a situation, don't say anything. The kindest word, I guess, is the one that's unsaid when it's not necessary. So, you know, but I know what they were teaching, and I admired these nuns who gave up their lives to teach, and some of them came from wealthy families and educated people, and they lived in convents, and they taught kids all day long, and they didn't get paid for it, but they had subsistence. And they did it for, I don't know, love of God, I guess. And the priests too. So I admire their ability to do that. That was with me all along. Then when things got under a little bit of pressure, you know, what do? If you're somewhat depressed, you either go to the psychiatrist or psychologist, or you go to church and pray and ask for help. And it makes you feel better. Well, you just saved yourself a visit to the psychologist. And American psychology, say American, I don't, it tries to get, I think, in many ways, tries to say, you don't have to feel guilty. Feelings are okay. If you feel a certain way, it's okay. Well, not in the religion I was up to. If it's wrong, it's wrong. If you're guilty of doing something, then, you know, go to confession. Tell the priest what you said and did or didn't do that was supposed to do. He'll give you some advice. Then he'll tell you to go inside and say a few prayers and try not to do that anymore. And you feel a weight lifted off your shoulders. Now, if you don't feel that and say, who was this guy dressed in a black uniform to tell me that what I did is wrong, or I think what I did is, yeah, do it your way. Just don't cut anybody's head off who doesn't agree with you. But if you're of that mindset, then that's fine. That's fine. My attitude is that sometimes people say, you know what, I want to do what I want to do. Church says it's wrong, therefore I'm not going to go to church. And who are they to tell me it's wrong? Well, I think a lot of Catholics leave the church for that reason, especially over divorce and remarriage without an annulment or something of that sort. I see people in church who live together and go to Mass, go to communion, and I'm going, whoops, that's not according to the rules of the church. Church doesn't say you're a bad person. It just says, look, these are the rules. Rules are if you live with somebody, unless you're living as brother and sister, you ought to marry him. And if you marry him, then you can come to church, receive the sacraments. If you live together and you're not married and you come up to receive communion, maybe you shouldn't. It's a difficult situation because that's common in a lot of marriages. I know a lot of nice people that live in this community that are in that situation. I just thank God I'm not in that situation. I don't know how I would feel if I were. I would like to think that God looks at us and says, you know, here are a whole lot of pluses and here are a whole lot of minuses. Let me subtract the minuses from the pluses, and boy, you got a whole lot of pluses left over. Come in. Welcome to my kingdom. If a guy has been a great person all his life, but chooses to live a certain way, I'll let God determine that. It's not my religion that forces me to think a certain way. It gives me guidelines to live by, and I find it comforting. I truly do. The lessons that I find most important in church, and our pastor seems to bring it out, is basically if you have, I think somewhere, and I don't know where, the Old or New Testament, God says, don't come here to tell me you love me unless you have made peace with your brother before. Go make peace with him first, and then tell me you love me. That's profound to me. Go make peace. Where have I seen you? The words that Jesus is supposed to have said to somebody. He said, when did I see you hungry? When did I see you thirsty? When did I see you without shelter? Whenever you have seen the least of my people without water and food and shelter, you've seen me. I'm not quoting the words exactly, but. So one day, I was walking, I don't know where I was, and I saw this strange looking individual wearing bizarre-like clothes, and I regret that I didn't say something or offer him something. I said, you know, it's funny. You walk around thinking, what are you going to do? You're going to see God wearing white robes, dressed as a rabbi, which he was, and gold ornaments and sparkling lights? No. I saw God, Jesus as well to me, in that person. I said, that's Jesus walking along the street. If you don't love him, you're not loving the other guy. So look at everybody as if he is a Christ-like figure, and treat everybody like you're treating your God. So I pray for something, I ask for something specific, and then I say, your will be done. Sometimes, as is commonly said, you ask for things, you don't get what you ask for, you get what's good for you or what you need. And I think that's happened to me a few times. I mean, the fact that I ended up in the Army and I went to Italy and ended up going to medical school, what a circuitous way to get there. But I got there.
And met your wife.
Yeah, and I met my wife there. Like, that would never have happened if I had gone to medical school here in the States. You know, what if I got admitted to Tulane or something? So I don't know. I think a lot of things, even things that I am unaware of, have been directed, I guess by God. I like to believe that they were. I mean, I think sometimes when I'm driving in a car and I jam on the brakes and I don't have an accident, not that it happens that often, but I think about, boy, you know, if the brakes didn't hold, I'd be up against the back end of a truck. So I think I have free will, but I think there's a plan, and if I deviate from something that might disrupt that plan, I'm guided back into it. The example, if I repeat myself, 15 or so years ago, when I had little bright red blood in the stool, which is not uncommon when you have hemorrhoids, everybody has occasionally some kind of vein. A hemorrhoid is just nothing but a varicose vein that's caught near the sphincter, and if you have hard stool and it makes it bleed a little bit, and you get bright red blood. But that's not a sign of anything dangerous. But that happened a few times, and it provoked me, propelled me towards my internist, who said, you got to go to a gastroenterologist. And sure enough, he found a bunch of polyps, the tip of which were cancerous. So we removed them, and by cutting them off at the base, polyps are like mushrooms. If you have a little cancer at the very top of the mushroom and you cut it off at the bottom, it's gone, it's curative. So I'm saying to myself, gee, I guess I was lucky. Or, rather than be arrogant and say I'm lucky, God had a plan for me, and he knew that I would respond to it.
How old were you when your mom died?
Well, she died in 1970. I was born in I was 38. So it was the most shocking experience of my life.
What happened?
Well, because I'd I couldn't believe that this healthy lady suddenly died. Like, it's not like she'd been sick for 6 months and we were treating her for cancer. She apparently had cancer of the lung, and she was losing some weight, and some of the relatives and friends were saying, you know, stop being on a diet. This losing weight is not good. She was always a kind of heavy person, and took her to the hospital and I did a chest X-ray, and they showed me the cancer all over the place, and I couldn't believe it. She didn't smoke. My father did, so it might have been from secondhand smoke, or it might have been the same thing I have now. I don't know, except that I was lucky enough to pick it up before it spread anywhere, and they took it out without any signs of any spread nearby, nor to the nodes nearby. So they just took it out, and I don't need chemotherapy or radiation. She would have needed everything. And she died within a couple of days in the hospital. My father went, like he couldn't, like this is not the way it was supposed to be. My father was born 1906. At 1060, my father was 64. And she was 60. My wife died at 63. So at that point, when she died, there was a sort of a bonding of, we both lost our wives at incredibly young ages. He couldn't live by himself. So in a way, it was like, whoa, he got married within a year after his wife died. In a way, I understood it as a tribute to the happiness he had in his marriage, that he could not live alone. And so he married another lady who was not like my mother, but she was a decent person. And he being the hard-headed individual that he always was, met another hard-headed individual, so they had their disagreements. Not violence or anything like that, but they had their disagreements. And so marrying within a year after his wife died was a sign that he could not live without a loving woman and live by himself. Yeah, I took my dad in to live with me because he was living by himself, and what I would do is sometimes he would be occupied on the weekdays, but the weekends it were kind of lonely for him. But then being out here, there wasn't a heck of a lot to do either. And he used to say living out here was like living in a cemetery. He said, there's nothing going on. If you don't have a car, you can't go anywhere. And he was right. My kids were gracious enough to often invite us over for dinner or an afternoon, whatever. And he would enjoy that part. But little by little, I kept picking him up a little later and bringing him back a little earlier so that he'd go back Sunday and he'd be ready to go Monday morning, walking around the area in Ridgewood where he lived. This was a card written by my father when he was 96 years old, and it's sort of a little note written to his children. It's written in Italian, October 16, 2002. This was just after he moved in with me. He says, cari figli miei, inclusi la famiglia dei figli, cioè miei nipoti, oltre 3 generazioni. My dear children, including the families of my children, including those of at least 3 generations. Non piangete la mia assenza. Do not cry for my absence. Sentitemi sempre vicino. Feel me always close by. E parlatemi ancora che io e la mamma vi sentiamo. And speak to me because your mother and I will hear you. Vi ameramo dal cielo. We love you from the sky. Actually, he's saying, we will love you from heaven come vi abbiamo amato sulla terra, as we loved you on earth.
and vi segneremo sempre, and we dream of you often. Che io e la mamma abitiamo insieme. That I and your mother live together, and we are always close to you. Saremo sempre vicini col pensiero, thinking of you, your vostro affettuoso padre e la mamma, your affectionate father and mother. Sempre che sempre vi pensiamo, we think of you always and forever. A mai finire, to never end. Kisses for you all, baci per tutti, vostro affettuoso padre, your affectionate father. And he always signed his name, Di Marino, as if I didn't know he was my father. When we were in medical school and he'd send a note, the guys would always roar. They'd say, your affectionate father, Di Marino. He said, that's hilarious. He would sign his name. That's why he always did it.
When did he write this?
I'm sorry?
When did he write this?
He wrote this at age 96, on his birthday, October 18th, 2002.
And he died 3 years later.
He died in 2006, 4 years later. He was 96. He died at a little over 99. And it was very touching, what he wrote. He wrote it on a card. I don't know why I don't have the original card. I probably have it saved somewhere.
Was he ill then?
I'm sorry?
Was he ill then?
No, he was never ill.
It's just,
Father was, he had typhoid fever as a child. That was it. And then he had a couple of hernias repaired. And he was on no medications when he died. I mean, up until the day he went into the hospital. He was not on blood pressure medication or cholesterol, nothing.
was he usually this sentimental?
You know, I knew he was because when my mother died, he wrote a poem about her, to her. About her, actually, not to her. Which I don't know where I have, somewhere. And I knew then, he could write, he wrote very well. He had a nice script, and as I say, he wrote often. I mean, 1 letter a week minimum, 1 or 2 letters a week, and they were 4 pages on both sides. And then when he'd get near the end, he'd still have more to write, and he'd write upside down on top of the margins. He would always wrote letters. So for such a hard, tough guy, the guy who would put a sledgehammer through a wall socket if he couldn't fix it, he was also very loving like this. And exasperating. He used to drive me nuts. But hey, he was Pop. I would say probably 98% of the time I wasn't worried about it, and 2% of the time I said, you know what? If this is the big C, this could be the beginning of the end. But you know, I've lived 80 years, and I've done a good deal of what I wanted to do. I haven't done everything everybody wanted to do, but then I think it was Jean-Paul Sartre, you know, appearances are what they seem to be, but behind the appearances there's nothing anyway. Words to that effect. So, I don't know, have I been happy with, yeah, I would have said, okay, so it's time for me to go. I'll in a very childish way, simplistic way, I would say, well, I'll be back with my ancestors, my wife and the rest of them and all. Or in a more theological sense, hey, we're all spiritual beings, and if we die, we're not somebody's child or somebody's husband or somebody's father. We are spiritual beings in the presence of God, and that's all there is. Not the Muslim concept of the gardens with the brocaded dressed little boys and 70 virgins running around and all kinds of food and all the material things that somebody would want in this earth who doesn't believe of any spirituality. Me saying, hey, my Christian belief is that if I die and I go to heaven, I'll just be in the presence of God, period. That's all there is. No, nothing more than that. So,
But now that you're through it,
yeah.
and there's a future, maybe a new future, has it in any way motivated you or made you think a little bit different about what you will be doing in the future?
You know, it hasn't. I have not made any new plans saying now that I escaped this with a glancing blow as opposed to a head-on collision, I'm going to do this, and this, which I hadn't done before. Actually, I've done just about everything I want to do. I mean, I play golf well when I'm better. I'll be playing golf on Tuesday. I attend the pediatric lectures on Wednesday. I work at the hospital 3 days a week. I'm taking the course I'm supposed to take. I go to the Concorso Italiano. I go to the Italian lectures. I'll be going to the political lectures at CW Post. Hey, that's keeping the mind active. Will I be having encounters with women? Well, if it happens, it happens. I mean, if I meet somebody who sweeps me off my feet in a visual, intellectual, and spiritual way, great. If it doesn't occur, it doesn't occur. I don't care. You know, I'm not going to be doing anything different. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I look forward to going out and playing golf, and I look forward to the concorso. I look forward to the lectures in pediatrics. I look forward to helping my son in the operating room. I mean, these are all great things. I see my friends who can't even walk from the house to the mailbox and come back. And I'm bitching. I have nothing to complain about. No chemo, no radiation. Man alive, that's freedom. Some of the people that have a good deal of affection for me remember things about me which I did or didn't do that are very complimentary, and I have no recollection of them. And it makes me feel good to think that I didn't do something because someone might recollect it and bring it to mind, but that because it was apparently the appropriate thing to do at the time, and that people would come up to me and tell me about what I did and how impressed they were with that is a very comforting feeling. To be judged by your peers and when you're in the field, that's good because they know who's pouring it on and who's got substance. Your patients, they know how they felt when you took care of them. Your children remember. My son keeps reminding me of things. Don't you remember when you did this? I don't remember, but good that you remember. I'm glad you remember. And that it made an impression on you. And so it's a comforting feeling, saying, you know, if I gotta go, I gotta go. I'll go, you know. Let me not create too many waves, and let me go, and I'll leave whatever I've accumulated and haven't spent to the kids, and hopefully they'll use it in a sensible way. I have everything I want. Could I buy more things? I suppose so, but more things don't mean a heck of a lot to me. I mean, I got a Maserati. Not too many people have a Maserati. It's an old one, 1981. Hey. It's 31 years old, but it gives me a lot of fun when I start that sucker up and it roars nicely. I say, so we got a Maserati, you know. But anything, and I used to say that to my wife, I like old things that work well. New things that work well, they're supposed to work well. They're brand new, they're supposed to work well. Old things that work well, to me, mean something. That's why I keep you as a wife. And she would sort of half laugh and half swing at me, but yeah, on that happy note.
We spoke briefly about dreams. Do you think about the past? Do you remember wide swaths of the past or single events? Tell me about that.
When I was in high school, I used to think about what a great deal it was when you're a little kid and you're in a carriage and somebody's pushing you around and you don't have to do anything. You don't have to study. You don't have to wash. People feed you, dress you, wash you, and drive you around in a carriage. And I said, man, I'd like that. I don't know why that came to mind, but and one of the fellas on the track team with me then said, I never think of the past. I only think of the future. It's the future that is important to me, not the past. And I thought, well, okay. I mean, it's not that I don't want to be part of the future, but I didn't think of it then, but that comment about if you don't respect the past, you're bound to repeat it, and probably not in positive ways. So, and one other thing I dreamt of probably 15 or 20 times in my lifetime. I've dreamt of me being on the back, I might have mentioned this before, me sitting on a dolly with 4 little wheels, you know, like the movers use, with 4 pieces of wood and a rug covering it, and being pulled by a rope attached to the rear bumper of a 1938 gray Plymouth, being driven straight up to the top of the Empire State Building, and I'm sitting on this thing holding on. Now, what the heck that dream meant, I don't know. But I dreamt of that a number of times, and I don't know what the significance is. I suppose somebody who's an analyst of dreams might be able to tell me what. But I've turned out reasonably happy with my life. I mean, I can't think of any big thing I would do. Like I said, I wish I had bought Microsoft when it was $2, and Apple and Chrysler when it was down $2-3. But hey, you know, not that it would make any difference, other than it would say to you, all right, so I got this pile of money on the side. I'm not going to go out and buy a Bentley or a Rolls Royce. It's a pile of money there that means I don't have to worry about money. And I can do the things I want to do without the concern. Now, maybe a lot of people say that, but when they get it, they act like crazy people. But that's but I'm okay. I can buy whatever I need. I don't waste stuff, but I'm happy financially. I'm okay. I don't have to depend on my kids. And hopefully I won't have one of these debilitating illnesses that will drain my my bank account with, 40, I don't know what costs in a nursing home, $26,000 a month or some incredible number, but I don't even want to think about it. My father said it, and I would just paraphrase that. What he said was exactly the way I feel. I mean, I love them all, children, grandchildren, eventually great-grandchildren. I wish them all well. I share no anger. The feeling of reciprocity is always there. If they love me, I love them back. If they don't love me, I still love them. And their mother and I, at some point, as my father said, we'll be together and we'll think of you and think of us often. One of the things that I regret is that my kids, some, and grandchildren aren't of the custom that I and my parents and my brother was. We visit the cemetery often. Whenever I would go back to the town in Sicily, always went to the cemetery to say hello to the ancestors. And on various holidays, I always go to the cemetery to pay a visit to my parents and my wife. They're right nearby anyway. And I wish that they would do that more. They did for a while, and I'm thinking, gee, I would, you say, well, would it make any difference? You're going to be cremated and you're going to be put in ashes in a little box on the, yeah, but there's something to it, I find, as opposed to just throwing the ashes out over the backyard or somewhere. Those ashes, that's what's left of me in there. That's the guy who worked and gave you an education and held you when you were small and all. So I would like that. I don't know if that'll ever happen because I don't think that that tradition has been ingrained. Although some of my kids have gone. I know they've gone because I've seen cards and all there. But I probably go a dozen times a year. You know, I go on my birthday, my wife's birthday, I go on Christmas, Easter, and the holidays. I go on the day they died. I go on All Souls Day. There are all kinds of reasons to go. I find it comforting. I don't spend an hour sitting there bawling. I go walk in, say a prayer over my parents' grave there in the ground. I'll walk over to where my wife is and I talk to her for a minute or so. I probably don't spend more than 15 minutes in the cemetery.
What do you talk to her about?
Oh, basically what things are like here, and that if you have any if you have any influence up there, see if you can give a hand to so and so who's having a problem getting through this stressful situation, whatever it might be. And if not, maybe there's a reason for it. But I asked them to intercede, if they can, for the children and the grandchildren, not necessarily me. Because, you know, you figure, hey, look, maybe there's nothing, but if there's something, I'm going to ask. And so it's a comforting feeling. It's like a trip to the psychologist in a way. And I walk out of there and I go about my thing. Like if I go shopping, well, I used to go shopping for Christmas or something, I would stop at the cemetery, wish my parents a Merry Christmas, my mother at the time. And then I'd go out and do my thing and celebrate with the family, knowing that I had not forgotten them. Some societies, I think the Oriental societies, have a lot more connection to the ancestors, and Sicilians do. Well, maybe I'm sure a lot do. But in America, it seems to be less so than in other cultures. And so I would hope that they would continue that. But I'm sure the great-grandchildren are going to say, who? You know? You know, when they were first born, I mean, my wife would go nuts holding them and couldn't wait to buy them stuff and all that. And I examined them all when they were in the hospital. In fact, I was present at the birth of my daughter. When Ninette had her C-sections, I was there. She wanted me in the room. And I said, aren't you embarrassed with your father? She said, no, I want my father here. So, and I took care of them when they were born. And I'm proud of them because they're each they're good kids, they're good academically, they're good in sports and mens sana and corpore sano, a healthy mind and a healthy body, you know, a sound mind and a healthy body. So I'm pleased that all of them have goals and have talents. Each has a talent of his or her own that is unique. I mean, I don't know if anybody's going to be a Picasso or a Major League Baseball player and all, but they're whatever it is that they're doing. I try to instill in them that you must achieve academically in order to learn to do something well that will serve you, to support you for the rest of your life. Now, what you choose to do, that's your choice, and you should do something you love to do. If you ask me a question about it, I'll say, well, you know, I'm not I'm not into academics. I'm a good person, but I just can't stand learning past participles and algebra and trigonometry and all that stuff. Okay, then you know what? Let's figure out a way you get a job in whatever, a pizzeria, an automobile dealership, and learn how to make that thing so well that after a while you come to me and say, Grandpa, I want to, they call me Papa, I've been working hard, I've learned how to do this, I found that there's an opportunity, if I could buy that pizzeria, whatever it is, hey, you know what? Sbarro started out with one pizzeria in Brooklyn and ended up, well, they went bankrupt, but they came back.
How many grandchildren do you
I
have?
have 9.
Can you name them?
Sure. Well, I'm not sure I get them in the order, but I'll do it by child. Ninette and Dennis have Dante and Rob.